Ahoy, Buccaneers and Buccarinas! My name be Captain Yugioh, and I have my dual disc from, when I was once upon a youngin'. Wow. That's nostalgic. And speaking of nostalgia, let's talk about that, right? One of the things that came up recently was that we started getting reveals for the next set, the Rise of the Duelist, which is supposed to be like the next big main set, but since we're not getting like the Rush Duels thing from Japan, considering they're having like the Speed Duels be the TCG equivalent of that, which I don't know if that means they're gonna like do some changes to Speed Duels or whatever, what have you. Well, with this set, it's the main set that basically just changes everything. It's like the first major divergence from like the anime and the like. And so far, the biggest parts of it are that they're supporting older archetypes that have been recently introduced, including stuff like the Nemesis archetype, Megaliths, more Senka stuff, or Ancient Warriors, I guess they are being called now, so that's a thing. And then they've got this whole new archetype with like some various retrains of specific monsters for Gaia, the Fierce Knight, of all things. It's kind of an odd archetype too, because it's like, it's mainly just like you get the Catapult Turtle retrain to get you the Gaia the Fierce Knight monster retrain. There's like 5 different Gaias now or something like that. But the whole point is that you're trying to get out this big fusion monster, which is supposed to be Gaia, the Dragon Champion. And it's got this attack where, it's got this ability where it's like, I can destroy a monster on the field, but you gotta lower my attack by 2,600, and I'm just like, why is that? But it's one of those things that's like, these kinds of supports, for old archetypes is kind of the norm, really, when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! These days. Right? I mean, that's just kind of how it is. There's just all sorts of support that just comes back. And, well, especially when it comes to, like, the original anime, I mean, nostalgia certainly sells. It certainly sells quite a bit, especially if you're just kind of a casual person. But, like, it's always something where it's like, it's hard to really tell, whether you want this deck to be really good, or if the deck's going to be really bad. And you're just kind of like, man, I look at Gaia the Dragon Champion stuff and all this thing, and I'm just like, this really isn't necessary for the game, right? Like, it just doesn't feel like it should be around. I mean, it's cool. It's cool that it is around, and I don't mind that it's around, and it's certainly an interesting, more developmental strategy, but, like, I mean, it's probably about as necessary and as functional of a deck as, like, the Summon Skull support was. Which, we're not gonna talk about that? Was that just a fever dream that just kind of happened? We got, like, all sorts of variations of Summon Skull that summon out the original Summon Skull, but then they don't do anything or have any interactions with each other. They're just kind of like, you just gotta play a bunch of multiples. It's like DDDs, but with Summon Skull, and also it's terrible. In the case of the Gaia the Dragon Champion stuff, the new Gaia stuff, it looks to aim to get a big monster on the field, have it attack a bunch, have it gain lots of attack, and just kind of work from there. But it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's always hard to like figure out whether all this nostalgia stuff is really good, necessarily. I mean, the Legendary Duelist stuff sells, right? Like, it does its thing pretty well. And that's all entirely nostalgia. The whole point of that is to be nostalgic. The whole point is just, like, focus on things, like, from the past. And, like, get new support for very old strategies that have no business at being utilized nowadays. You've got stuff like, I mean, they gave support in these Legendary Duelist things for, like, the Mako Tsunami C deck. They gave support towards, like, Weevil's, like, Cocoon deck. They made Cocoon of Evolution an actual quick play spell, which is probably, frankly, what it should have been instead of a monster card in the first place. And then they let you, like, do stuff with that, right? Like, it gave support to these different strategies that it's like, I mean, they were never really a big deal, but it's also, like, they're good. And it's good to have these strategies and the like. Take, for instance, the Dark Magician stuff. Dark Magician is a fan favorite. It's one of the most iconic monsters in the entire series. it has all the support to it, and yet it's always been like, you know, a casual strategy at best. Which is hilarious when you then look at something like Magician's Souls, which is then being used in other decks on a competitive level, or you even just compare it to Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes is a fairly casual strategy nowadays, but there was a point in time where the deck was so competitively viable it actually topped a World's Championship. Like, it's so crazy, and it's one of those things where it's like, it feels like nostalgia powers up your interest in these things, where it's like, oh man, whenever new Dark Magician support comes out, you're like, that's really cool, I bet that can really improve my Dark Magician deck, and then my deck can be closer to like Yugi's deck or something, because Yugi's the king of games, and you know, I could be the king of games if I build Yugi's deck, right? And it's just like, it feels like there's this stretch of like tangential stuff. Like, it feels like it's a stretch to go from here to here, where it's just like, I have a Dark Magician deck that I want to build, there's new support for it, the better my Dark Magician deck gets, the closer I am to Yugi, better closer to get Vidi, king of games, and then, you know, I get this new support, I become better. But then it's like, you've got stuff like, you know, Gaia the Dragon Champion, which is like, I guess before that, Gaia was really more of a Blackluster Soldier deck. Because it's like, it wasn't like Gaia was like his own thing. He wasn't being used, there wasn't Gaia support that was specifically to be utilized with just Gaia the Fierce Knight and bringing out Gaia the Fierce Knight. I mean, still Blue Magician you can count, I suppose, but it's like, you know, most of the new Gaia support prior to this recent wave of expansion in the Rise of the Duelist stuff has been focused on Blackluster Soldier and Blackluster Soldier ritual monsters, because Gaia the Fierce Knight has a more connection to Blackluster Soldier to some degree. Depends on what you look into as far as the lore goes. So it's kind of interesting that really these decks kind of like get popularized because of these like ties to the anime and just these iconic monsters from the anime. So it's like, you get Gaia the Fierce Knight, who, you know, gets a retrain because he's Gaia the Fierce Knight. He's one of Yugi's monsters, he's one of Yugi's most iconic monsters. And then you get stuff like, you know, the Curse of Dragon retrain, which is specifically designed to complement this new Gaia stuff, but also as a callback to Yugi's Curse of Dragon, which he used in Duelist Kingdom. And then you get the Catapult Turtle retrain, which has been completely demolished from, you know, Catapult Turtle, oh, I throw my monsters at you and OTK you. Now it is specifically being used to, like, support the Gaia stuff. So it's interesting that it's like these monsters kind of like show up again in a familiar form, but then they do stuff that's completely different from what they used to do, and completely different, but it's like, you know, they have familiar faces, they have familiar forms, and it's almost kind of like, you almost feel like Dragon Piper is gonna come out, something like Dragon Piper is gonna come around, and it's just gonna be like, take over all of your opponent's Dragon-type monsters and also destroy them with it because you're Dragon Piper, and that's just what you do. And it's like, I don't know anybody who were doing that, but hey, who knows? I could be speaking out of my, you know, I could be speaking out of nowhere, and suddenly, come one of these next sets, there's gonna be a Dragon Piper thing with, you know, Dragon Capture Jar. And it's hard to say whether that's the direction they want to go with the main sets, where they want to start out by supporting, like, you know, or not even supporting, more like retraining old iconic monsters and strategies and just making them into their own thing. I mean, now that we've got the deck, the Legendary Duelist bundles kind of going down to the Duelist packs, going to like 3 themes, supporting 3 different decks instead of like 5 different decks like they have been up to this point. It's going to be more like, you know, it's going to be more focused in that regard. So maybe this is kind of like where they're throwing in some of like the other ideas. I don't know. I guess my point that I'm trying to get at is just kind of like, is the nostalgia worth it for kind of a general bunch of mediocre strategies? It's one of those things where it's like a lot of the nostalgia support just doesn't really pan out for the most part. I mean, taking a look at the last Legendary Duelist pack, I mean, everybody's going nuts over Magician's Souls. Like, there's no question about it. Magician's Souls is the highlight of that Duelist pack. It's the highlight of that set. It's the rarest card. It's the hardest card to get. It's the money card. But, like, there's other stuff in that set. I mean, you've got, like, some Elemental Hero stuff, which has got a little bit of support. I mean, obviously there's one short-printed Elemental Hero, but then there's stuff like Satellite Warrior, which is, like, it's nostalgic in the sense that this is referencing a part of the anime that was at least, you know, almost 10 years from its end at this point. Like, 9-10 years ago, give or take, more or less. And then you've got stuff that's like support for, you know, the Onomatopoeia group in Zexal, and you got stuff that's, you know, support for the Performavels in, you know, Arc 5. And none of these cards are particularly powerful or worthwhile or really being, you know, there's no attention being drawn to these cards. But these things have a lot of attention drawn to them because they're so powerful and the like. But it's really just like, it's not even like all the cards, it's really just specific cards. And it's only, the only reason they'll get this attention is because they're getting short printed and or they're also competitive. In the case of like something like Magician's Souls. It's almost like the question kind of becomes like, okay, what's the point of working into these nostalgic angles to sell these sets if most of the time these things don't work out? And maybe this is an extension off of my Legendary Duelist, right? Maybe I just hate the Legendary Duelist subsets because it's always like, as of late, they've just gotten so stupidly excessive in terms of what they do. But then it's like, I also like them because it's like they support these like older strategies, these strategies that you saw in the anime, and you're just like, wow, I could use Destiny board in like this really cool fashion that's actually going to make it work, and it's going to actually be functional, and it won't seem like I'm trying too hard to make this work, and it's like, no, this will work, because it's like, it's got these functions going for it, and it's like, I can actually execute upon the strategy, and I can, you know, I can unleash the power of Destiny board upon my opponent successfully! I mean, relatively speaking, because it's not like this is a competitively viable strategy, this is a casual strategy, most of the time. It could be competitively viable, but it's like they're not printing cards that are making it competitively viable, they're making cards that make it a better strategy to execute. So it's one of those things that it makes these strategies a lot more consistent and a lot more playable, but, you know, not necessarily more competitive as a result. But maybe that's not a bad thing. You know, a lot of people love the nostalgia stuff. There's a huge chunk of the fan base that loves having all of these casual strategies because it makes playing the game so much more interesting. It's one of those things where I think of, like, years ago, like, back in Zexal days, I was playing with a group of buddies, and one of them had suggested that it's like, if you wanted to build a deck, you just gotta pick an archetype, pick a playstyle, build a deck around that, and then that could be your deck. And Yu-Gi-Oh's grown to the point where it's just like, that's completely fine. Like, that's completely doable for anybody who wants to be part of this game in any capacity. There are strategies for all manner of playstyles. There's competitively viable strategies, there are casual strategies, there's control-oriented strategies, there's aggressive strategies that try and destroy boards. There are strategies that are dedicated to playing around Destiny board and all the like, and then there are strategies that are dedicated to playing around Exodia, but not necessarily using Exodia's win condition to win the day. It's a wide variety of like different strategies that just kind of like make the game a lot more interesting to play. And in a way, if it wasn't for the fact that it's nostalgia sells, you wouldn't even have strategies like Exodia or Destiny board, or like there's the train strategy, which is like, you know, it's expensive because of the individually pricey cards that you need to have in order to run it successfully, but people play it. So it's one of those things where it's like, nostalgia does help fuel the game because, you know, it helps bring in people who want to remember these older cards and the like, but also want to, you know, come back into the game with these newer strategies. So, like, people will look at the support and be like, oh man, I remember when Gaia the Dragon Champion was launched off of a catapult turtle and ran into a castle, and the castle fell down to the ground and killed a bunch of monsters. I remember that. You're not gonna do anything like that with this, but you can do stuff that's kind of similar to it with this strategy. Maybe that's why it actually loads Tech by 2600. Now that I think about it. But that's the thing, it's like there's a lot of strategies that are just complement like all sorts of different levels of play, and sometimes that nostalgia helps complement a specific style of play for a specific kind of deck for a specific type of player. And there's nothing wrong with that. So, I know I kind of went on rambling for a little bit, mostly because I'm just kind of like, I wanted to talk about this because I wanted to talk about the Gaia support, but then it made me think, man, this is like so tied to this nostalgia thing. It's like, is nostalgia really a good thing? Is it good to like remember these things? And it's kind of like, well, the answer really is just like, yeah. yeah, it is good to make these cards because there is a certain kind of player who's looking for these kinds of cards. There's a certain kind of person who's going to, like, come back to the game after years of, like, not even dealing with it. They'll look at the game and they'll be like, oh, hey, is that guy the Dragon Champion, but he looks super cool now? And it's like, well, yeah, he is, but that's because he got upgraded with a bunch of new support. And it's like, it's something that helps kind of, perpetuate momentum. It helps keep the momentum going, and I'd like it if this game kept going, honestly, because if it doesn't keep going, well, I guess I don't have anything to talk about, do I? But, I don't know, what do you guys think about this little topic? Do you think nostalgia cards are good for the game? Do you think it's great that Konami designs these cards for all these older archetypes, for all these older strategies, for all these older ideas that have been part of Yu-Gi-Oh's history since the very beginning? Do you think it's good that they make cards that develop upon these strategies, or make new strategies based on these ideas? I don't know. If you like the video, don't forget to give it a good old thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you want to watch more, watch some of my other videos as well. I do Overwatch videos on Tuesdays, Hearthstone videos on Thursdays, and I do Yu-Gi-Oh videos on Fridays. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications, because that's really viable, you gotta watch all the vids, you gotta watch this stuff. It's gotta be mean-tastic. Down. I didn't think that moved through.